Welcome back to another episode of the Max Turn Podcast. Kyle Stitch here alongside James Finch. And today we are revisiting our preseason predictions, kind of as we're at the Four Nations break. Figure it's a good time to revisit how wrong we were at the beginning of the season. So I think most of the episode will be talked about how wrong we were, because we also are going to do some predictions moving forward, but spoiler alert, we don't disagree on a whole lot in kind of how the rest of the season's going to play out. So I think we'll spend more time kind of talking about looking back at what we had said in the beginning of the season, and then talking about a little bit going forward. Appreciate you listening. Max Turn Podcast available on pretty much all major podcast platforms. Contract projections, that's our main kind of bread and butter, available on X at AFP Analytics. It is a pinned tweet. We're also on Blue Sky and Threads at the same handle. I think X and Blue Sky are where we probably post the most. We will cross post amongst all three, but if you're looking to engage, X is first, Blue Sky second, Threads third. But feel free to let us know your thoughts. Appreciate people who do engage with us, and we enjoy having those type of discussions. So let's get into, I guess let's start with where we were at the beginning of the season and why we were right, why we were wrong, what's went right or wrong for some of those teams. And then we'll continue kind of to how we see the rest of the season playing out. So not going to go every single round by round, but I think we'll highlight some. So we had both comfortably expected in the Atlantic Division the Maple Leafs and Panthers to make the playoffs. 1 and 2, we disagreed on the order, but 1 and 2, we had the Lightning in third, and I had talked you into the Sabres making the playoffs, and you cursed me out almost every other day for that.
Yeah, so you had him wild card 1, I had him wild card 2. I don't even remember who I took out when I made that switch last minute when you talked me into it. I think my initial gut feeling there, I should have stuck with it because things are not looking too good for the Sabres.
It might have been the Penguins. It,
Maybe. I vaguely
so I either
remember
talked you
that.
out of the
So,
Penguins or the Caps. I think it was one of those two teams, one of which looks okay, the other does not look so good right
all
now.
right.
So, I mean, Maple Leafs and Panthers should still be the top. I know things are getting a little bit tighter, but I think the Panthers should be close. The Maple Leafs haven't been fully healthy much of this season, between Matthews, Marner, both missing time here and there. Big free agent addition. Yanni Hakanpää hasn't played a game yet for them. Kind of say that tongue in cheek, of course, but
Yeah, so I agree those two teams should be right at the top. Like you said, we were kind of in agreement of that, but not which order. I had Panthers ahead of the Leafs. You had it the other way around. Going to be a coin flip from here to the end of the season. And then looking past them in the Atlantic, that's where things got a little more unsure for us, but we both ended up with the same team, the Lightning.
and I mean,
And then we both had Sabres,
yeah,
which
that's probably not going to happen.
which one? The Sabres? Because
The Sabres,
so the
probably,
Lightning,
but that's not a sure thing either.
yeah. So the Atlantic looks very kind of unsettling, in my opinion. If I'm a team that's kind of hoping for playoffs, obviously we've pretty much said Buffalo's it's not going to happen for them, but Lightning, Bruins, Senators, Red Wings are all kind of hanging around. Even
Montreal, yeah,
Montreal's even starting to sneak up. They're a little bit lower than the other group of teams, but they're not completely out of it yet.
no, and especially given that the 3 seed is still very much up for grabs.
Oh
I
yeah, a good week or two, and they're right, like they're
exactly.
right there. So
I mean, and we're talking like the Panthers and Maple Leafs are sure things.
yes,
They're even the Maple Leafs aren't a sure thing in second place. It just feels like once they get healthy and kind of maybe on a little bit of can get on a little bit of a roll, probably at this point coming out of the Four Nations break, but we'll see how that goes. But I can see them kind of solidifying themselves up there pretty comfortably when all said
yeah.
and done.
If I had to bet on it, I'd say it's more likely they claim first place by the end of the season than drop to third or further.
I would agree with that sentiment.
Kind of looking at the Metro, what we had. So we were pretty much in agreement on the teams represented in the playoffs from the Metro. Again, we were just a little bit flipped exactly where teams placed in there. So I had the Devils finishing first, then the Hurricanes. You had the Hurricanes, then the Devils. And then beyond that, third place in the Metro, we both had the Rangers, and we both had the Islanders sneaking in a wild card spot, but I had wild card one, you had wild card two. So at the start of the season, we weren't too different there. I will say how do I feel about this? I don't like my Devils pick. I think they're still a solid team, but I was much higher on them at the start of the season, expecting a little bit better of play. But I'll also say I'm not shocked that the Hurricanes are playing as well as they are. I'm a little bit shocked at the Capitals, although we did really like their offseason.
Yeah, I would say that we can't take too much of a victory lap because we neither of us thought they would make the playoffs,
Right.
but we definitely talked them up. And okay, again, I didn't expect them to be leading the division, but I'm if you had told me that they would be right in the mix of like an automatic spot in the Metro, I wouldn't have been shocked by that. A little bit mildly surprised, but we had talked them up and they clearly have exceeded expectations.
Yeah, I think even back at the start of the season, they were probably in that wild card conversation for us. They just weren't picked by either of us. So yeah, it's definitely not a victory lap, but am I shocked? No, just based off of who was on their team and the offseason they had.
So while we're here, I don't know how much we had talked about this trade actually on an episode. The Hurricanes getting Mikko Rantanen for Martin Necas and Jack Drury, in essence. Hurricanes also bring in Taylor Hall. That is its own puzzling move by Chicago
Yeah.
there. We
Yep.
I think we've put enough out on Twitter and we're far enough away from like the trade, but I think it'd be interesting to talk a little bit about how we see Rantanen maybe impacting where the Hurricanes ultimately end up. Is it going to be a little bit of a dip while he gets adjusted to play and then helps in the down the stretch run? Do we not like the fit? I guess where are your thoughts on that with the Hurricanes?
So, not to kind of sidestep the question, but I I almost think it's a little too early to have an idea of whether the fit's good or not. And I say that because Rantanen just stylistically is not really the prototype Hurricanes player. That said, someone more similar to Rantanen, Jake Gensel, did pretty well there last year. So I don't think it can just be written in stone. Okay, well he's not their prototypical player. It's not going to work well because it has worked well for other similar players. He's the go-to guy on the team now. If you look at Carolina and say who's the franchise player, it's Rantanen, at least for the rest of this season. So I would also expect, even though he might not naturally fit into their system perfectly, a lot of what they're going to be doing is going to cater to his strengths. So I would assume, maybe assume is not the right word. I would be willing to bet that Rantanen positively impacts the Hurricanes and kind of provides that same level of scoring that they had gotten last year from Gensel.
Let me go back to another, and I don't think this was necessarily in the preseason. I don't remember exactly when, but I remember bringing up as a possible like trade roster shakeup the idea of Andrei Sveshnikov being traded from Carolina. So you had shut that down, which is fair and fine, because I don't think either of us would have expected the Hurricanes to have gotten Mikko Rantanen mid-season. Curious what your thoughts are if maybe trading him away instead of Natchez would have made sense.
You know, I'm easy quick answer would be yes. At the same time, I think factoring in how things went this past off season with Natchez, I'd probably lean towards still moving him if I'm Carolina specifically. If I'm a random team and I happen to have both of those players on my roster, I would move Svechnikov. I think Natchez is his ceiling's a little bit higher. But that being said, I think it would also be fair to spin it around the other way. And if it was Svechnikov being offered instead of Natchez, maybe Colorado doesn't do it. And really quick, that's not meant to be a knock on Svechnikov. I think he's a solid top six winger, probably ideally second line. Still a good player. I wonder if that kind of makes it a little more uncomfortable for Colorado and they don't do it.
Yeah, I think the one thing that's a little bit more interesting is that I think I feel like Rantanen and Svechnikov have more similar play styles than I think Natchez is a little bit different. I'd read someone today or this week, I don't know, days are starting to blur a little bit now, where they were talking about Natchez and McKinnon both like to be the primary puck carrier, which is fine, but that doesn't work when you're playing together and there's only one puck on the ice. So
Right.
I, again, I don't know if I don't necessarily disagree with you, but I think it's a very interesting, and I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall to maybe hear those discussions. Was like it always Natchez, or was there a discussion between the two GMs of it potentially being Sveshnikov? And I agree, it might, maybe Carolina has to add a little bit more, which is why it did end up Natchez, and then add in the offseason kind of contract dispute. But maybe time heals that, and same with putting a lot of money on the table for him in the summer might take care of that situation anyways.
Yeah, and I will say just for full context, it seems Carolina is having Rantanen and Svechnikov on separate lines. So maybe that points to Carolina being a little more comfortable bringing in Rantanen. Like, hey, one, I mentioned Gensel already, but we've also got Svechnikov, who is somewhat similar, not at the same level, but a similar type player. Colorado, I've seen they tried Natchez without McKinnon, and then he's been playing with him now. So I don't know. Long term, I feel like those two could be separated. It's kind of still up in the air, I think.
Well, we'll get to Colorado a little bit
Yep.
more in a minute. Rangers, the Islanders were the other two ones we had in the playoffs earlier. We both expected the Rangers to take a step back. I don't think we expected them to at one point be near the basement and then working themselves out of that hole, but logic dictated that their underlying metrics last year and even at the start of this year were at a level that was just not sustainable. Eventually it caught up to them, probably dropped a little bit farther than you would have expected, but now have seemingly figured out bring in JT Miller is a very good move for them, I think. Still kind of shady how they got rid of Jacob Truba. And I also, it's interesting that they were willing to give JT Miller Jacob Truba's number just a month or so after moving him out. But I guess that's what happens when number nine's retired and, Miller's worn number nine his entire career. But anyways, I guess quickly Miller trade as well, impact on the Rangers.
I'd say a good thing. I think for a while we've kind of been saying they need a top six center and honestly a first line center. And so far it's been Miller kind of on that first line. Zibanejad now moved to the wing. That's good. That's exactly what we've been saying New York needs. And assuming it continues to work well, I think they'll be a playoff team still.
Yeah, and they didn't give up a whole lot from their roster to bring Miller in. I mean, Philip Heedle's a nice player, and I think
Right.
he could be very good in Vancouver.
Yeah.
But when you can bring in JT Miller by only basically sending out Philip Heedle off your roster, like that's a no-brainer.
That's trading a middle six center who has good potential, good skill, but has had injury issues, and landing a first line center. That's a no brainer.
Yeah, you're hitting the upgrade button,
Oh yeah.
and yeah. Anyone else in the Metro? So Capitals, we had liked their offseason. I think Logan Thompson's been far exceeding expectations. Like I've always been a fan, but I wasn't expecting him to be this good. I think one of the better preseason predictions, I'll skip ahead a little bit here, that I had made was a little bit kind of silly, but at the same point, it was a lot, like I had a little logic to it. I had kind of jokingly, but kind of seriously picked Ovi to win the Rocket Richard. I'm like, okay, he's motivated to break the record this year. And if he, in his fashion, he's going to go and just try and smash it this season. He was on pace for a while to potentially do that. And unfortunately, the leg injury.
He probably still breaks the record
Oh,
this
yes,
year.
yes,
It's
yes.
Rocket
Winning the
Richard's
Rocket
not going to
Richard.
happen.
Yes. Was he leading the league when he got hurt in goals?
I don't remember.
I think it was close. He was within
there,
striking
yes.
distance.
Yeah, it's kind of frustrating that he got hurt because it would add just to the awe of the whole situation if he got the Rocket Richard and broke the record. Was the best goal scorer in the league at the time he breaks Gretzky's record. That would have been really cool. At the same time, not going to downplay the significance of breaking that record, anyways. I don't think it takes anything away from breaking that record. But yeah, I'll give you props for that pick because even though it's not going to come to fruition here, it could have.
And the Capitals, I don't know if I want to say resurgence, but ascension maybe is more than just Ovechkin having a really good season. Dylan Strome has become a very legit. Is it fair to say top line center at this point, or very legit top six center? I don't know if I quite want to say like
I
he's a
would say
1C, a true 1C, but he's close.
yeah. So I think when we say 1C, we start to think of. Well, I guess I don't even know how to explain it to separate them. I feel like if he continues playing the way he has this year and maybe even next year he adds another season just like it, I think maybe you could start saying first line. I think I just need to see the level of play more consistently from him. He's been good in the past, but not as good as he has been this year. So I would say like he's a good top six center. There's him. A lot of their young guys are playing really well. McMichael looks
Yeah.
good. Protas looks good. Even on the blue line, like Sandin's doing well this year. So like I think that really speaks to the resurgence, really. I mean, they had some good offseason moves. Chikrin, Matt Roy's there now.
Dubois has been
Dubois has been actually a top 6 center.
correct. Yeah.
So,
Again, is that the appropriate contract? I don't know, but he's at least closer to that value than when he was in LA.
which, if you told me a line of Protas, Dubois, and McMichael was going to be like a very good line this year, I don't know if I would have laughed at you, but I would have disagreed.
Even you just saying that sound absurd right now. But
Yeah.
no,
I mean, they're all good players. The younger guys, they have the potential, but just for all three of them to click at the same time
yeah.
this year, I I would have predicted that not to happen.
Another kind of player, a little resurgence. Tom Wilson's actually
It's been
playing
solid.
been a solid like top 6 winger.
Yeah.
From a skill standpoint. And well, I guess he also hasn't been suspended yet either. So
It's
I
been
guess
hurt,
everything's looking up.
but not suspended.
Yeah.
But yeah, so this is a team, a lot of additions that are working out really well for them. And it's all clicked. That usually doesn't happen, but honestly, good for them. Fun
Spencer
team.
Carberry, coach of the year. Probably not clear, but potential. I think
very much in the conversation.
There's another team I think in the Metro that want to highlight Columbus. I know they're right there. Like they could be in the discussion for the rest of the season.
Yeah.
Like they're teetering right on like, can they sustain it? Do they have enough? Are injuries going to
They've
derail
dealt with
them?
a lot of injuries.
Zach Wierenski, tremendous season there. Sean Monahan, when healthy, was solid. Kirill Marchenko has been playing tremendous.
Broke his jaw. He's part of that injury.
Yep.
Like he'll be out for a little while. So it's
Four Nations probably came at the right time
yes.
for Columbus to be able to maybe regroup a little bit, get healthy. And I mean, tragedy sometimes is a motivator, and you just not like I had mentioned it preseason. Things could go very poorly because that's a tough thing to recover from. But you can also be extra motivated, and I'm not gonna say that tragedy's driving them to new levels, but it's an interesting dynamic that I think a lot of people are rooting for them to. I would love to see them get like wild card too.
So I guess this kind of gives something away prior to making new predictions. I didn't put them in my new predictions. I was very close to doing it. I'd love to see it too. I'd love to be wrong and see them make a run in the playoffs even. But yeah, we'll see. It's going to be tough for them because of where they are right now. They're not out of it. They're still right there, but just all the injuries. I hope they can kind of tread water until some of the guys come back.
So let's move to the Central. We both like the Stars, Avalanche, Jets. You had talked me into the Predators. So we're kind of even. I talked you into the Sabres. You talked me into the Predators.
That's true.
Both of those are not looking.
Both are pretty much right at the bottom of the league. So that's an even. I don't even know what to call it.
I guess
Even
egg in the face trade.
Yeah, right.
So I think the surprise is the Jets. So if Spencer Carberry is not the coach of the year, it's probably Scotty O'Neill.
This is another one I'm kind of like, we both had to make the playoffs at the beginning of the season as a wild card one. At the same time, I'm not like totally shocked just because of how that team plays. And our issue was so no more Monahan, no more Toffoli, and they didn't really replace those guys, so we were kind of expecting a little bit of a drop, but they're still playing the same game and have kind of gotten who am I thinking of? Nemesnikov. Before they had traded for Monahan last year, he was kind of up in the lineup and he was fine. It's not his ideal spot, but he was fine. Well, that's kind of where he is now. And again, maybe it's not the ideal spot for him, but he's making it work. So I don't know. It's a team that in the past has just made it work, and they're doing it again. They've also got the best goalie in hockey. Have to pretty much mention that anytime we talk about the Jets. That helps a lot. So absolutely, it's not what we were expecting to happen, but I'm less shocked as or less surprised as I am about the Capitals.
Yeah, and I think when we did this exercise last time, or we did, I think a little bit earlier, but our mid-season kind of revisit, we had made predictions. I think I had the Winnipeg Jets hoisting the cup. At some point, I think I had the Jets hoisting the cup, and I think it was mid-season because they had enough. They started off really well, had just added Monahan.
Yep.
I'm not calling that they're going to take a little bit of a nosedive just like last season, but we saw it happen last year. Quick look at some of their underlying metrics. Corsi for percentage, right around 50%, just a shade below actually. Expected goals 51%, so that's pretty solid. But it's not top of the league solid.
No.
So Connor Hellbuck helps a lot
Right.
because
Yeah.
he covers up a lot of those expected goals. Okay, the expected goals are for a neutral goalie. Connor Hellbuck is not a neutral goalie by any means.
No, he's pretty much he's like the standard of a franchise goalie. That's what he is. So generally an average team, he's going to make a arguably elite team, at least record wise, which he did it last year. He did it the year before, maybe. It's kind of, I don't know, maybe next year we'll learn our lesson and have the Jets a little bit higher at the start of the season.
And wasn't there a point where it was potential that he was available for trade?
Before that last contract, or I guess the one he's on now, I believe. Yeah. Well, it wasn't just him. It was a few guys from
Yeah.
Winnipeg too. It was kind of a are we staying? Are we all staying, or are we all going type of thing. Lucky for them, they decided to stay, or at least Hellebuck
Yeah.
for sure.
And I don't know if Cheveldayoff was got any like firm off like how close he would have considered, but if he was legitimately considering it for the right package and no one stepped up with the right package, that yeah, there's some teams probably regretting that
Absolutely.
if they were in the conversation, but we don't know that. Stars having a very stars season, very solid. Nothing.
So to me, I will say they're kind of lucky, in my opinion, that some other teams in their division haven't. Colorado's had their issues, and I think Dallas is benefiting from that a little bit. I guess I'll say that.
Minnesota as well at one point was right up there and have
They
fallen off.
they're still very much in the mix. It's injuries have hurt them,
Yeah.
big time.
Yep.
But there's some things about Dallas I don't love, specifically defensive
Yeah.
part of their lineup.
Especially with Miro Heiskanen. He should be back before the end of the regular season, definitely hopefully for the playoffs, but I guess it's not as hopeful as when it first came out. It's like, oh, it'll be a little like a few weeks. Now it's more like multiple weeks, which could start pushing.
And they'll make the playoffs still, in my opinion. I think they'll probably make some moves too. They have some LTIR space to work with that will help them out. So I think they're very much still going to be good. I just am I'm a little more hesitant about them than I was last year.
Oh, so you don't have confidence in a blue line partially led by a combination of Matt Dumba, Ilya Lubushkin, and Cody Ceci?
No. Shocker.
I know. Real quickly, Cody Ceci and Mikael Granlund
Yes.
for basically a first round pick. I think there's one other asset sent San Jose's way, but I don't know if it's relevant. Like, no offense to whoever it was, but I don't know if it's enough to move much of the needle here.
So, CC, I will say, underlying numbers aren't great.
Aren't greats being generous, but yes,
He was also playing top pair minutes
on a
bad team. Yeah. So if he plays even second pair minutes, or maybe more ideally third pair minutes on a really good defensive team, traditionally, system wise, should be fine as kind of that lower lineup depth piece. Again, my issue with the Stars is I look at the right side of their defense and all I see is the lower lineup depth pieces. So someone's going to be playing a role too large for them, in my opinion. Granlund, we'll see. Not necessarily the type of player that screams Dallas Stars to me, but I don't know. We'll see. I think he might fit in well. They kind of need the scoring up front.
He's had chemistry with Matt Duchene going back to Nashville.
Yep.
So I think the one thing that I know a lot of people were getting hung up on, a first round pick for a trade involving Cody Ceci. Like, I don't mind the price. Like, I think it's a fair price for both. I've said it on probably almost every single podcast episode we've recorded in like the past 2 months. The rental defensive market is thinning by the day, and especially on the right side.
Back when Trouba was traded, and we were kind of saying, well, there goes like number one right shot deadline option, and everyone's freaking out like that can't be right. Trouba's bad. Well, no, like he was the top UFA right shot, and CC wasn't far behind. I don't remember specifically the list we had months ago.
Borgen was also up there, already traded
off
and
the
locked
market.
up. Yep. So I had done a quick look, and it'll be, I think it was Yoki Haru and David Savard might be the top two options on the right side at this point, as far as like potential rental players. Like, there's other ones out there, but they're on teams that probably are going to, at a minimum, use them as their own rentals. So I'm down to like a Yoki Haru and Savard as being two of the better rental options.
And don't get confused by the word better there, because neither are necessarily intriguing acquisitions.
Supply and demand.
Yep. So I guess to tie it all back, Cody Ceci, it could actually end up being the best move that was out there.
Yes. Yeah. And I think that was part of what Jim Nill had talked about in his press conference after after doing this trade, as he highlighted that, and I think that was spot on.
I will say we're more in a time now where some people care a little bit less about left shot, right shot. So sure, there might be an argument there against CC, and maybe they could have gone for a better player. Maybe. But if the team's looking for a right shot specifically, there weren't necessarily clear better options.
I think even expanding that to left shot, Marcus Pettersson also very quickly traded. Like, it's thin. It's really thin. Like, Pettersson was one of the better ideas out there. He's to Vancouver. And yeah, I think there might be a couple other left shots that you would put maybe ahead of like Yoki Haru and Savard, but it's not great if you're looking for a rental defenseman. Right. Maybe we'll use that transition with Vancouver, talking about Vancouver, to anyone else we want to highlight in the Central. Predators bad, didn't really work out with all their offseason additions.
That's really the main one. I guess we can just sort of mention Canucks. Everything that's gone on this year, they're not in a spot they want to be in currently.
No.
Not something I think we expected prior or at the start of the season. I don't think anyone was really thinking one of Miller or Pedersen was going to have to go at that point.
No.
So that obviously was not a good situation for the team. We'll see if the Canucks can rebound, at least as well as Miller has with the Rangers. Yeah, I mean, hopefully they turn it around, but they're not. We both had them second in the Pacific, and that might not.
Seems
I think
very unlikely at this
it's
point.
very unlikely at this point, and you could even question if playoffs happen for them this year. So I think that's really it for the kind of reflection on our standings predictions.
Pacific, I guess Pacific real quickly. So Canucks, so
Well,
Oilers should win that.
yeah, we were
We
there
both
with
had
that.
Golden Knights. We weren't high on the Kings. I think that was another team that we were
That's
wrong
true.
on.
Yes.
They've been very, very good, especially at home this year.
Yes.
Kemper's been fine. Like the goaltending's been fine. Drew Doughty's back, so and he's played well in the games he's been back.
Their defense is very good,
Yes.
and they have depth there
Yep.
now. Even before, when Doughty was still out, they had depth.
Yep.
I would almost wonder if that's a team. Do they look at all the defensemen they have, and are they willing to move one to get like an impact forward? Or maybe they improve their goaltending, because that's really where we were iffy most with the Kings. So yeah, they blew past the expectations I had for them.
Yeah, I don't know if I was Rob Blake, I'd be looking at the Western Conference as a whole and be like, man, we have as good of a shot as just about anyone here.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm okay moving. I'll just say Brant Clark. He seems like the most desirable asset that they have. Like
that could help land them a big
big
target.
Exactly.
Even going down the lineup, like if it's not Clark, would they move Spence? Good asset still. It's not. It won't land you as high level of a player, but like they've got some options. We'll see, but yeah, they're just as much in a spot as a team like the Avalanche, in the West. So yeah, we were wrong there.
Yep. So let's we're a little past half season, but let's use the knowledge that we've gained through watching a little over a half season of hockey, almost 2/3, I guess, and make our where we think the standings will end up. These should be a little bit more correct because we have a pretty good sample of games to work off of.
Yep.
So I don't think we don't have a ton of differences here. So I'll run through some of the common ones. So Atlantic, we both have in this order: Panthers 1, Maple Leafs 2, Lightning 3. Get to the wild card teams in a minute.
Yep.
Metro, Capitals 1, Hurricanes 2, Devils 3. So the only thing that's not, I think the only like not sure thing based on like kind of where the current standings are. I mean, the Hurricanes and Devils are close. I shouldn't assume that the Hurricanes are going to finish ahead of the Devils. And I guess never mind with that. I was going to make a point about the Lightning but we already kind of talked about how there's a jumbo mess in the Atlantic anyways. So wild card is where it gets interesting because we can probably sit here and make an argument for and against just about every Eastern team to make a wild card spot if we haven't already mentioned them as one of the top 3 teams, except probably the Buffalo Sabres. And even that, I could make a very flimsy argument for them being in the mix.
Yeah, Buffalo, I feel not quite as good about the Pennsylvania teams, Pittsburgh and Philly.
Yeah.
But they aren't completely out of it yet. So yeah, we each have the Lightning. Wild card were slightly different, but this is not nearly as clear as, let's say, like the top two teams in the division, or even top three.
So my logic is I'm going to lean towards teams that have proven to have gotten it done down the stretch. So that kind of, I think, narrows in on three teams that have not been mentioned yet: the Bruins, Islanders, Rangers. Those are the teams that have traditionally found a way to get it done. And of those three teams, I leaned towards the two teams in the New York City metropolitan area making it: Islanders, Rangers, and the Bruins ending up missing out because I have more concerns about that team organization and everything like that. That was one that we had talked about preseason. This might be a year things kind of come apart. Another place we were right. That's who I might have talked you out of for the Sabres, putting the Sabres in over the
It might
Bruins.
have been. I think it was
And,
the Bruins, actually.
and I'm kind of right on the Bruins.
Yeah.
Like,
You just had me put in the wrong team.
yeah, well, again, Predators.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
So I lean towards the Islanders and Rangers. I also think I trust their goaltending a little bit more, Sorokin in particular this year. But the Rangers at least have two goalies that you feel comfortable in net, and it's Shesterkin and Quick. So, and that's not a knock on Swayman, but he hasn't been as good. And again, that
yeah.
was a concern I had going into the season. The Bruins could make a move and maybe add a little bit more up front and get, like, I think they can be right there. And they're a team that does know how to win, but they're start feels like they're starting to get towards the end of that window. So I'm leaning towards Islanders as actually wild card 1, Rangers as wild card 2.
Okay, so everything you said about the Rangers with the goalies, I'll toss in the reminder. JT Miller, first line center, they now have one. That's huge. They're my wild card 1. And I have Ottawa sneaking in as wild card 2. And like you said, there's plenty of teams who could be right there. I actually like Ottawa this year, and they're a little different than past years. Their underlying numbers aren't bad, they're fairly solid. And one of the main things I like that I this is a key for this prediction to actually come to fruition is Linus Olmark needs to stay healthy, because if he can stay healthy, he's playing well. He's having a good season. So I need him to kind of separate and be that number one goalie and not be a tandem with Anton Forsberg. Let's see number one Vesna caliber Olmark down the stretch. And I think Ottawa currently in a good spot. They're right there. I think they could solidify a playoff spot here.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I'm just going with the logic. I'm going to stick with the teams who have been there, done that,
Yep.
until proven otherwise at this point.
And I will point out we each had the Islanders in the playoffs at the start of the season.
Yep.
One of the main reasons there was because they're just the Islanders. They're always there. And midseason, I'm now taking them out of the playoffs. So I'm sure that will come back to bite.
It's usually me who takes them out, so we'll see what happens
You never
here.
know. We'll see.
And shockingly, this year the Islanders' underlying numbers are actually okay. Like, relatively speaking to how they've snuck in the playoffs in other years, like
True.
they're playing at a more sustainable level, or at least underlying wise this year, but actually not getting the results. Where previous however many years they were definitely outperforming kind of their expectations.
I will say quickly, I'm a little something uneasy for me about the Islanders is I'm not sure trade plans with them.
Yeah.
They've got a couple rentals that could probably bring back a good return, like a real solid return. And for a organization that pretty much has no futures as far as quality draft picks or prospects, that could be somewhat intriguing.
Yeah. Yeah, that it's going to be an interesting dynamic. Like, they're probably a team that all the way up to March 7th, I think
I
the
believe it is.
deadline is.
Yeah.
They could go either way. Like, they could buy, they could sell, they could do both. Kind
Yeah.
of send out an asset and then use those assets to get a different asset type thing. Yeah, there I
So we'll see. That's just where some of the I don't know. I guess that's kind of driving
yeah,
my
fair.
decision to
Very
replace them.
fair. And Bruins could be in the exact same spot, to be honest.
Yeah. And honestly, for all we know, in a few weeks, that's Ottawa. Like
They probably have less name like
yeah, but
yeah.
I just mean they could go from feeling good in a
Yep.
spot, let's push for the playoffs, to more of a okay, maybe we're not that team yet.
Yep.
It's very close. So
Western Conference, you have one bold prediction here. Actually, you have yeah, I guess one bold prediction. So we both have the Jets, Stars, Avalanche, Wild as a wild card team. We differ on what number they get. So Central, we're pretty in agreement there. I mean, I don't really see anyone in the Central that's going to change, like cause any chaos to those four teams. I think it's just a question of can the Central get four teams in, or do five come out of the Pacific? I think that's the
yeah,
only intrigue at this point. Pacific, Oilers. I have the Kings followed by the Golden Knights, with the Canucks sneaking in. And this is where you go bold. So
yeah,
Oilers winning, not bold. Golden Knights getting second, not super bold. The Calgary Flames in third, and the LA Kings in wild card spot one, so fourth in the division. I think that's where the boldness is. Calgary.
yeah. Dustin Wolf, great rookie goalie, and I honestly I think they're going to be adding or trying to at least. They already brought in Frost and um, I'm blanking Farabee.
Yep.
Frost and Farabee. So we'll see how those two players fit. I kind of like the Flames. Going back to the start of the season, I had the Blues just sneaking in wild card 2. And I remember at that point, I was kind of back and forth between the Blues and the Flames. We're at midseason. They're still hanging around there. My big thing here with them third and the Kings as a wild card is I'm just going to point right back to the Kings and their goaltending situation. It's been good enough so far. I'm not overly confident in it though, especially heading down the stretch. And if a team like Calgary makes a move to make a push here, they might push past the Kings.
I don't know if I see the Kings dropping that far. Honestly, if you had said the Golden Knights falling to a wild card spot, I would buy that. They've been really struggling, really, this calendar year to win games. But they're also the Golden Knights who know when they need to turn it on. But we'll see. I just the Kings have very very good underlying metrics. I know
Yeah.
the like goalies can sink or can either sink you or float you, and so yeah. I mean, I don't disagree with the goalie concern. I just
And I'll agree it's a bold prediction,
it's bold. I don't think it's
but
insane. It's bold.
yeah.
President's Trophy. I am going to stick with my preseason prediction and go with the Edmonton Oilers. Started off the season a little bit slow, but have just been quietly humming along since then.
I think the Jets do it. I had the Oilers preseason as well. And I like the way things are going for the Jets. They're a team that's likely to add and they have the best goalie in hockey.
So, awards. Art Ross is the scoring leader, correct? I believe.
Yep.
I don't think they're Leon Draisaitl. Both of us
Yep.
agree there.
We have the same list of 3.
Yeah, I think I picking like one's to lead scoring at this point in the season. More than one feels a little cheating, but yeah, McKinnon, Kucherov, me and McDavid always
Well,
could make a push, but
yeah, it's pretty much giving the top 3.
yeah.
Like it Hart Trophy gets interesting. Well, maybe not. Hart Trophy often mirrors the Art Ross, but I like to have fun with it and throw in a different pick.
So we both have. I have one as Draisaitl, two as McKinnon. You have it flipped, which I debated that myself. I think that's absolutely fair. Those two players seem to be the ones most carrying their teams right now. Then my third, I'm going to stick with my preseason prediction because I think it was bold then. I don't think it's a, and it still looks fine. Jack
Yeah.
Eichel as kind of the other finalist. McDavid hasn't had, to his standards, as good of a
Right.
year. Austin Matthews has been in and out of the lineup. One of the Panthers, Barkov, Reinhart, could absolutely get some consideration, probably.
Yep.
I would wonder. I'll let you put your name out there, and then I'll wonder about someone.
So initially, start of the season, I had McDavid. He's not even on my list. My third preseason was Jack Hughes. I thought about it still because he's a big part of why the Devils are in a good spot right now. But I'm putting Mitch Marner. For Toronto, he's been what I'm comfortable saying he's been clearly their best player this season. And I don't want to say it isn't close, but it really isn't close. I'm very comfortable saying he is by far their clearly best player
I'd
this
say
year.
most valuable, at least.
Yeah,
Biggest impact,
right.
which could be the same thing, but
I also love the idea of him getting top 3 votes when they have to decide whether or not they should be keeping him or not.
yeah.
So that's another reason I'm tossing him in there. One, I think he's deserving, but two, I like the drama.
So I think there's a lot of names that we could add to this list, but let me throw out this one. Could Connor Hellebuyck get some votes for the Hart Trophy?
Should he? In my opinion, yeah, but pitchers don't often get MVP votes in baseball. That's kind of my comparison there.
Quarterbacks win NFL MVPs
Every year,
every year.
no
I
one
know.
else. Yeah, like I guess that's my comparison. Is like
I mean, it's been a long time. I think
maybe a
Dominic
one
Hasek,
Winnipeg.
last one to win it.
Yeah,
Maybe
maybe
here.
one Winnipeg voter,
Yeah,
but I doubt he gets like into the top 3 or even top 5. There's a very good argument when you
it's just a year
take a step
where,
back from it.
like, okay, Draisaitl is in Edmonton, but like McDavid's also there. Like, your idea of Marner, yes, but Matthews is still there. Tavares is having a good year. I'm
Yeah,
not saying great. Nylander's there as well. McKinnon's got Makar. I mean, Eichel's.
or does Makar have McKinnon?
Well, exactly. Does Draisaitl have McDavid, or does McDavid have Draisaitl? Like,
Yeah, that's true.
could you have put the wrong Hughes in the Hart Trophy conversation?
Possibly.
Put a Q dot instead
Yeah.
of a J dot. I mean, he's been having a great year. And I think one more player I want to just throw out here.
Yeah.
We'll get to him in a second as well. Zach Werenski.
So this is hard because it comes down to it's the whole argument in any sport about what does most valuable player actually mean. And I referenced it already when we were making sure we had the awards correct. Hart Trophy is oftentimes the same as Art Ross, whoever has the most points. Well, that's the most valuable. That's not true, like, at all. It's the lazy way of deciding who is the most valuable player.
Wouldn't the most valuable be the ones who are logging the most ice time, which are usually defensemen?
Potentially, but you can keep taking steps further and further and further of, how good are they when the player's on the ice? This is why analytics is a thing. So I 100% agree. Those other names you brought up should absolutely be in the conversation. I just would be surprised.
So, anyways, I think there's tons of names. It feels like it'll probably be Draisaitl, McKinnon 1 and 2. It'll be
Yeah.
interesting maybe where 3 through like 5 shakes out.
Yes.
Let's go to the Norris since we're go
Really
ahead.
quick, I do want to mention something about the Hart Trophy. McDavid not having his usual season. I wonder, there's going to be people that still vote McDavid, and I wonder if that causes Draisaitl to not get enough first place, or I guess total votes,
Yeah,
and McKinnon slides ahead.
I don't disagree with that thinking. I was very close to putting McKinnon there, but I think Draisaitl deserves it because I think
Yeah.
he's been the bigger driver in Edmonton right now.
Yes.
But again, we can make the same argument about McKinnon and Colorado. But Edmonton, I expect to finish higher in the standings, so that's where I'm going with. Let's move to Norris because we kind of referenced some of the names that are going to be
Yes.
talked about here. We both have the same 3 players as finalists. Order's different. We both
Backwards.
yep. So we both have Quinn Hughes second. You have
Werenski first. Makar third, with Hughes right in the middle.
yep. And I have Makar first, Werenski third, Hughes
Yep.
in the middle. Quinn Hughes, of
Um,
course.
So, best trophy for best defenseman. I would say it's creeping into my head a little bit, probably, and maybe it shouldn't. But people vote however they like to vote. So I'm going to say his importance to the team overall, not just the fact that he's a defenseman. Easily their best player. He's going to get the nod for Norris, in my opinion. Quinn Hughes, I would say easily the best player in Vancouver. Little bit of injuries, time missing.
Yeah.
These two are very neck and neck for me. Personally, it's easier for me to have Makar third. My dilemma is what do I do with Werenski and Hughes?
I have Makar first strictly. Basically, I expect him to end up with the most points, and like for a while he was towards the top of the overall leader in points in the NHL.
Yeah.
So that's that. Like he's a really good defenseman who's probably going to lead all defensemen in points, and probably by a little bit of a healthy margin when all's said and done. That's my logic. Would you say that these 3 are pretty clear cut and dry, the top 3? Or is there someone else that you would consider in this discussion?
I think I would say they are my clear top 3. There's some other players who are having very good seasons defensively. They're not quite in the same ballpark points wise. Kind of looking quickly at who I wanted in my top 3, a couple names that stuck out that kind of go into that group I just mentioned. Thomas Chabot for Ottawa is having a very good season, and Thomas Harley for the Stars is having a very good season. Big part of Ottawa's success is probably Chabot having the season he's having, and I don't think people realize the best defenseman in Dallas this year has been Harley, not Heiskanen. So those are 2 guys that kind of caught my eye. They're not in the same ballpark on points, and when I pretty much have those same arguments for the guys with a lot of points, that helps me separate it.
Go to the Calder Rookie of the Year. I think we agree here.
Yeah, Celebrini.
Yeah.
Hudson, I think, gets the nod over who we have third in Michkov.
Yeah. So you had
Yeah.
Celebrini preseason.
Yep.
I had Hudson in my top 3 preseason. You didn't.
Yep.
I guess that's kind of both of our victory laps right there.
Yeah.
Sneaky I mean, Will Smith was my preseason pick. He's had a nice little stretch as of late. Not a great start to the season, but a nice little stretch as of late. And won't win it, but sneaky having a up there in scoring is Yuri Kulik Buffalo.
Yeah.
Like he's right up there with with Celebrini with when you look at point scoring, playing top line minutes. He's not going to win it
No.
because I think it's a little under the radar relative to these other names.
Yes. I would say role wise, he's playing a big role now, but it's a little too late in the season.
Yes. Yeah.
Another player that fits that specifically that I had noticed was Jackson Blake for Carolina.
Yeah.
Another player who I believe he's playing with Aho and Rantanen. A little too late.
Yep. Rocky Richard, I told you putting more than one was cheating.
Yeah.
Well, Leon Draisaitl has a pretty nice lead already in goals.
Yes.
I don't see him being caught.
Nope.
Selke.
Here's our yearly Sam Reinhart
Appreciation.
few minutes.
Bang the drum.
Yeah. Should have won it last year. Should win it this year. And I'll say specifically about this year, looking at forwards and complete players, both ends of the ice, really good defensively. Reinhardt's kind of in his own category this year. Barkov's going to get a lot of votes.
And he's going to win it.
Probably. It statistically should be Reinhardt. So much so that I picked Reinhardt first, Barkov second because he's Barkov. He plays with Reinhardt. You did the same, Reinhardt, Barkov. And then I struggled to figure out who I would pick third. And I picked a name who just always gets votes because he's solid defensively. He always gets votes. My number 3 was Jordan Staal.
Yeah, I went with your number 3 in the preseason, Jack Eichel. I think perception-wise is he's become a very well-rounded two-way player. Yeah. And I think he's important to Vegas's success, so I think he's going to get votes for awards. Just pulling up real quickly, this is very quick. Expected goals 4% relative. Let me throw a couple names out forward-wise that might be a little under the radar. Matthew Barzal. Really, he's might miss the rest of the season, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's the issue there.
Brandon Hagel. Very under the radar.
Not surprising. More, yeah. If Reinhardt doesn't get it, Hagel's not coming close.
No. I guess I haven't gotten to Reinhardt, so I guess that I don't have a great like stat argument, but he's still looking at expected goals against per 60 relative, basically seeing how much better teams do with shot suppression. I'm just kind of looking to see if any names stand out again. Not really, but there's Reinhardt. I mean, he's probably one of the higher, like, consistent top of the lineup players.
Yeah.
Yeah. He is. The other interesting one, this name would not have expected. So probably as far as like top 6 players go, there's a lot, of course, lower lineup like role players who have played a game or two. Alex Killorn is actually the if we're using expected goals against per 60 relatives, so doing the best at minimizing expected goals while they're on the ice versus when they're on the bench.
Yep.
Alex Killorn is actually number 1 as far as like top 6 forwards go. And then Reinhardt. Yeah. Logan O'Connor's up there. I know he's not top 6. Ilya Mikheyev, another name. Again, he's not necessarily top 6. And then basically I get to Sam Reinhart.
Yeah.
So.
That's interesting, Killorn being that high. And it's not even interesting because of Killorn. I mean, I guess it is a little bit, but because he plays for Anaheim.
Exactly. Yeah.
But hey, maybe someone will hear this and throw him a vote.
Do your job, writers who are listening. Actually, do your job and vote for Reinhardt in awards
don't.
because he deserves them.
Yeah. Yep.
Give Korn like a 5th place vote or whatever you get to do. Vezina award. Vezina.
We talked about Hellebuck.
It's going to be Hellebuck.
It is. I have Vasilevsky. You as number 2. You have a different Russian goalie.
Ilya Sorokin. If the Islanders make the playoffs, he deserves votes because he's been great as of late.
He started the season slow, and he's been turning it on lately. So
again, if they make the playoffs, he deserves consideration. If they don't, he won't. So,
and then we've each got Logan Thompson third, which is kind of at this point he has to get some votes. He's having a phenomenal year.
Jennings, best team save percentage. I think this is pretty wrapped up by the Jets with Connor Hellebuck mainly leading the charge.
Yep. And their backup goalie is doing well for a backup.
Well,
Eric Comrie's doing fine as a backup.
He had a stretch where he was on like a losing streak. I don't think it was necessarily his fault, but yeah.
When you're looking at save percentage, he's not
bad.
He's not negatively impacting that. And a lot of backups would.
I think he just wasn't getting the goal support.
Right.
Lady Bing, sticking with Sean Monahan. We're going to rename it the Johnny Gaudreau Award, and Sean Monahan's going to win it this offseason.
Yeah, so I didn't even really think about that at the start of the season, which this was an award you kind of threw on last minute. And you made me go first.
Yeah.
So now that I have a chance to revisit my Lady Bing pick, I will also choose Monahan. That covers the awards. Moving into the playoffs.
Yeah, don't want to spend a ton of time on this one.
This can be a quick run through of kind of how we see the playoffs going.
So Jets we both have making Western Conference Finals. We both have them playing the Oilers. Anyone else you want to highlight there? You have Stars over Avalanche. I have Stars over Avalanche. You have Avalanche over Stars. That's a coin flip series.
The only thing I'd say is my bold prediction of Calgary making it. They have trouble against Vegas first round.
Yeah.
So my bold prediction is not crazy bold. It's just...
I was close to saying LA beats Vegas. Whether that would be an upset or not, I don't know. But anyway, so we have the Oilers, Jets coming out facing in the Western Conference Finals. In the East, Panthers making it to the Eastern Conference Finals. You're very chalk Washington coming to the Eastern Conference Finals. Both have Carolina over New Jersey in round 1. I have actually the Rangers upsetting the Capitals in round 1. I kind of think that the Rangers figure it out when it comes down to it. We both, probably the most shocking thing in this entire bracket.
Yeah.
The Toronto Maple Leafs make it out of the first round.
Yeah, we both have them past Tampa.
They want Florida again. And they're going to get Florida again.
And they're going to lose.
And they're going to lose again. So both of us, Florida in the Eastern Conference Finals. You have them going back to the Cup Finals.
Yep.
I have them running out of steam and losing to the Mikko Rantanen-led Carolina Hurricanes. Finally have some goal scoring. Finally have someone with playoff goal scoring experience. And I say that gets them over the hump. I know Jake Gensel last year did too, but I'm going to say Mikko Rantanen gets them over the hump finally to the Cup Finals. So we both have the Oilers out of the West beating the Jets. So you have a rematch of last year's finals. I have Oilers Hurricanes.
Yeah.
Is Connor McDavid finally lifting a Stanley Cup?
You think so?
I do. I think he finally gets it done.
I think we get more locker room videos of McDavid yelling and pissed off because
They lose to
they
Florida
lose to Florida again.
again.
Yeah, I just those two teams matching up again. I like Florida.
Fair.
I will say my biggest I guess bold prediction is Washington making a run to that Eastern Conference final.
Yeah.
Just riding the wave of Ovi breaking the record.
I kind of have the opposite feeling. I kind of feel like they reached the emotional high and
Yeah,
just can't sustain it, especially against a Ranger team that probably figures things out.
that's very possible. I so I guess that's a good thing to point out is your first round matchup is Capitals Rangers.
Yeah.
Mine does not fall that way. Mine would fall Panthers Rangers, which for me I have to go Panthers.
I have Panthers Islanders, and if that were to come to fruition, the Islanders kind of stand pat or even add a little. That could be a tricky matchup for the Panthers. I mean, the Islanders are tricky
They're
for
tricky
anyone.
for anyone.
I
Yeah,
know.
especially if Sorokin is at the top of his game. That's not an easy series for anybody.
Well, I think we've now given you an update on exactly how everything will play out. We're probably less likely to be wrong this time, even though last time they were guaranteed to be 100% correct prediction. So I guess this time 200% correct guarantee, something like that. I think that math works. So we appreciate you listening. Max Stern Podcast available on pretty much all major podcast platforms, and we will talk to you next time.